Hey everybody, it's Anthony with Life Soldier Living. Today I want to talk with you about fears and the fear of failure. Okay, it's something that everyone goes through, but people don't really like to talk about it or admit it for that matter. Make sure you watch to the end because I'm going to give you some free bonus material today. All you have to do is let me know where you want me to send it. Okay, so let's get started. So the fear of failure, not uncommon, like I said. All right. But for some reason, when you bring it up, people think I'm not afraid. Well, to some degree, we're all lying to ourselves. And I wholeheartedly believe that. Everyone at some level or some degree, is afraid of something at some point. Okay. And the downside to letting fear, especially fear of failure, drive your actions or lack of actions, actually, is that you're limiting your life. Okay. Because when we let fears take over, we kind of start living in this bubble and we get comfortable. And to a degree, that's okay. Because everyone has different levels of how they define success. How I define success might be different than you define success, and that's okay. The point is, right, dealing with fear is an everyday thing. But today I want to talk about some strategies or steps that you can take so you can start moving in the direction of not letting fear control your life, not letting it control your actions or lack of actions. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing I think is important is you have to pinpoint your fear, right? Lots of different fears, especially today. Are you afraid that people will laugh at you, whether, you're, giving a presentation at work or, you're, whatever it is, you're on stage, it doesn't matter. Are you afraid of public speaking? That's another very common one. Are you afraid of failure, as we talked about? Are you afraid of success? Yes, that's actually a thing, right? If you actually think about, what success would look like, with that inherently comes some additional responsibilities that you may not have right now. Maybe you're comfortable doing the 9-to-5 job, come home. If you have a family, maybe, you give them a hug and a kiss and you watch TV. If you don't have a family, you come home and maybe you just veg out. If that's what you want and that is how you define success, carry on. All right. If that is not, and for many people that I know and that they're in my circle, that is not success. And again, everyone defines it differently. So if that's how you define success, that's okay. So anyway, pinpoint your fear, right? What is it exactly that you're afraid of? Okay. And then moving from that, the next thing that you have to do is determine, right, what your meaning of failure is. Again, it's different for everybody. For a student, if they don't get 100%, that might be failure to that individual student. I think that's a little extreme, and I don't recommend that because if you live by perfection, there are very few things, and some would argue there are no things that anyone can be perfect at in life. Now, when you have a grading rubric, that makes it a little bit easier. If you get 100%, you get 100%. But in life, things aren't necessarily graded on a scale like it is in a classroom. So determine what your level or what your definition of failure is. And then the way that you can start, and this is where the strategy comes in, dealing with failure is that you have to look at it as nothing more than an unwanted outcome, right? And that is how you can take, what we call failure and just learning from it, adapting, adjusting, and moving on. So I think that's important. All right, the next thing, you have to envision success, right? It's easy for our minds to move to the negative, right? Think about the successful people that you know or that you think are successful, right? And we can talk about some famous ones. You can talk about Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates, or Warren Buffett, Mark Cuban, whoever. Do you think that those people prior to, if you're defining success in these terms of money, and that is not the only definition by any means, but for this example, do you think that they just envision themselves as poor, as barely scraping by, and then all of a sudden, poof, they've got all this money? No, they envisioned that. They envisioned the roadmap on how they wanted to get there. All right, so you have to allow your brain to focus on the positive things, all right? And in this case, envisioning success, whatever success looks like for you, because it's very natural for our brains to focus on negativity and the negative things. It just comes natural, and you've got to change that habit, and you've got to envision success. All right. The next tip I'm going to give you is I want you to reflect on the worst case scenario. And this goes hand in hand with the previous tip, right? It is easy for our minds to go to worst case, all right? And it's not a bad tool, but you have to flip the script on that. You have to start thinking about the best case scenario, okay? Or the best possible outcome. Because what that does is over time, you're gradually going to change that habit, and you're going to reprogram your brain. Instead of going to the worst case scenario or the worst case outcome, you're going to think of the best case scenario, okay? And a little tip for that, and how you can slowly start shifting that that focus, is instead of just focusing on the worst case scenario, obviously, focus on how you would deal with that worst case scenario, or how you would deal with that outcome. All right, because then if you're prepared for it when it happens, right, it's not gonna alter the course that you're on or the path that you're on so dramatically that you can't adjust and adapt. Okay, the next thing, the next thing is to think about your failures of the past. So, and when you reflect back on that, think like, what actually was the worst or so bad about it. But generally speaking, when you reflect back on some failures, hopefully you learned from it and continued on and grew from it and adapted. So thinking back and putting, I call that putting it in perspective. I think that can help, again, shape your mind frame and your mindset to not dwelling so much on the fear and anxiety that people feel, more common than not. And this will also let you adapt to the things and the discomfort and the feelings that failure brings, right? So again, this relates similar to what I said, thinking back to the feeling that you had or the discomfort, right? We all know the discomfort I'm talking about. If you get super anxious about something and your stomach starts to knot, or you actually have physical changes and you start to sweat or you shake, once you get through that and you think back, wow, I survived, right? So it's never as bad as our our mind tells us it is at the time, right? Just keep that in mind. And that's why these tips can help you start shifting your mindset. And so when you're starting to try and conquer your fears, for whatever you have a fear of, you've got to start out by taking small steps. Okay? Identify what that trigger is, acknowledge it, move through it, and then again, applying some of these previous tips that I've just discussed, instead of just thinking, oh my gosh, what is the worst thing that's going to happen? Plan for it. Well, what if that happens? What's my way forward? All right. Small steps starting out. If you've watched some other videos, it's kind of like making a keystone habit in a way. If it becomes routine in how you approach fears and think about fears, eventually, small steps at a time, that will become your habit. And then the last thing I want to talk to you about is, if you are in a position right now where your fear, depending whatever it is, we're going to talk about fear of failure right now. If you're allowing it to stop you, I want you to think about what your life will look like in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, whatever works for you, and depending where you're at in your life. As you can see, I'm getting older. I've got whites and grays. So, 5 years, 5 or 10 years may be good for me. 50 years, I might not even be alive, let's be honest. Anyways, I digress. So look at that and envision, if I don't make any changes and I let fear of failure keep me from action, what does my life can look like? And you have to put this in a perspective of almost a risk versus reward. Because it's risky right now. My body, my mind, my physical reactions tell me that it's a risk. Our bodies are wired that way. Our brain tells us it's a threat, so our bodies perceive it that way, and we have a reaction. But if you can work through that, what would the reward look like, right? And this goes back to envisioning what success for you looks like. Do I want to be, if I'm looking at a 5-year time frame, and I look at one end where nothing changes, and if I am the person right now that is letting fear almost give me some paralysis in taking action, or do I want to look at the person that works through the fears and I'm envisioning what my success is? Which person do you want to be, right? Is that little bit of risk, what my body perceives as risk, the fear, the anxiety, is that worth working through for the reward of my success and what I envision as success? I would argue it is, every single time. Okay, so these are just some small tips and strategies that you can start small and start working towards conquering your fear. In this case, fear of failure, but whatever your fear is. But most fears stem from fear of failure of something else. All right. I will tell you that if you're more of a person that likes to read, you can visit lifesoldierliving.com and you can read this in a blog format. It won't be exactly the same. But do me a favor right now and post in the comments below, what is your biggest fear, or what do you experience most common? What type of fear do you experience most common? Okay. And before I get to the free giveaway, the bonus material that I talked about at the beginning, if this provided any value for you, do me a favor, give me a like below, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell icon so every time I post a new video, you get notified. Okay, so we also have an ebook here at Life Soldier Living. We have several. One right now is again in line with today's video. It's about creating habits to conquer your fear. How to succeed in life and business. And I am going to give you that ebook for free. Again, all you have to do is let me know where to send it via email address. So if you look in the description below and you click on the www.media.lifesoldier.com, the ebook is yours. It's got some really great value in it, or content in it. It's helped me. It's helped my wife. And because, I am very passionate when it comes to fear, I think a lot of people never identify, or again, like I talked about earlier, never admit that fear is kind of controlling their life, keeping them from taking action on things that they really want to do, because it might be a little uncomfortable. You might be a little scared. You might get a little knot in your stomach. And once I realized that and I identified that and I was able to work through some of those fears, transformation is incredible. Absolutely incredible. There's some tips in this ebook. In addition to what I talked about today, some material in the ebook that's not even covered in this video. So go ahead, check it out. It's yours. Just tell us where to send it. Again, I hope you got some value out of this. Make sure you stay the course and enjoy the journey. Until next time, we'll talk soon.